A warm welcome to our live edition of the Magpie Circle. Running a little bit late tonight. It's been a busy day for all of us, Leigh Curtis included. Welcome, Leigh.
Hello, how are we doing?
Yeah, good to see you. Stephen Orton straight in on the banter. He says, tell Leigh, not long till the barbers are open now.
I've had so many pelters from it today, even in the press conference. I got called Wiggy, and Callum Roberts even waited to see what my hair looked like and said it was the worst hair he'd ever seen. So it's been that kind of day.
Right. We have got a lot to discuss, and I know you've got a lot to write. So yes. Thank you. This will be a slightly abridged version tonight. We're going to be talking new signing, Tylor Golden, yep. Eagle to his Eagle, isn't it, his new nickname? So you spoke to him today. Team news ahead of the game at Stockport tomorrow. Oxford City have been busy, I believe, in the last half hour tweeting about Saturday's game. So it would appear that they are certainly going to be playing that one. And then, of course, we've got the big news about the roadmap out and crowds being allowed back into games, which, as it would stand, would allow us potentially to see the one final home game of the season. Let's get through all that. Plenty of questions as well. Kevin Duska has just joined us from Montreal, offering his a pair of clippers to mail over to you. I don't know how long they take to get here, but when you've waited that long, I would suggest it will probably, the clippers will arrive from Montreal shortly before April the 12th.
It'll probably take that as long as to cut it as well, won't it?
Right. Okay. So you've been on notch duty again ahead of Stockport tomorrow night. So we have a new right back. You've had a chat with him today. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, really impressive. Came across very well. Had a good upbringing. Was at Manchester City, I think, and Blackburn Rovers as a kid. Went to Wigan in 2014. I think made one appearance or a couple of appearances in the Papa John's Trophy or the Football League Trophy, whatever you want to call it. Is now at Salford City, very highly regarded. Big Manchester United fan, of course, with Gary Neville there. So he said today it was a bit surreal for him to be able to speak to one of his heroes, but came across really well. And Neil Ardley spoke very highly of him. I know he trained with the players today and certainly made a quick impression. Very athletic, good going forward, sound defensively. I would imagine very similar to how Jordan Barnett is. You know, who's had a very good level of education at Barnsley, and you know we've seen what Neil likes from his fullbacks. He likes them to be adventurous. He likes them to be good on the ball and good in the final third. So really interested to see how he gets on. I think he might not play tomorrow night because he's had one training session and it's a big ask to throw him straight in such a big game. But Neil didn't rule it out, so. We'll have to wait and see what transpires, but by all accounts, he's got a very, very good career ahead of him.
It's interesting. I mean, he's going to have to work hard to get in on the face of it. I think Jordan Barnett settled in very well at left back. Dion Kelly-Evans has done extremely well this season. So he's going to have to work hard to get a starting place, I would think.
Yeah, I think obviously the competition for places. I mean, losing Richard Brindley is a blow because I really like Richard. I think his experience and he's been brilliant since arriving on a free transfer. But as we've seen, you know, the quality of the defence. Obviously, I didn't see the game on Saturday, but it sounded like again that Notts didn't really give up many chances until sort of the final stages when they were going for broke and trying to get an equaliser. Yeah, like you say, I mean, Dion Kelly-Evans has probably been one of the players of the season. Barnett's come in and settled in really well. But I would imagine that if he doesn't start tomorrow night, I think Neil, as we've seen in the FA Trophy, will probably play him against Oxford City at the weekend.
Okay, we'll come on to that in a moment. Stockport tomorrow. Now, we beat them twice already.
It comes in threes, apparently. That's what they say.
Yeah, but I was going to say, it's hard, whoever you play, to get 3 back-to-back wins over the same team in a season, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And obviously Stockport made the change in the manager with Jim Gannon going and replacing him with Simon Rusk. And Heard nothing but good things about Simon Rusk as a coach. Likes his teams to play football. How quickly Stockport are able to adapt to that remains to be seen, because I don't think it's gone as swimmingly as perhaps Simon would have liked since coming into the club. They were beaten at the weekend, weren't they? So, I think it'll be a hard game, as we saw with Chesterfield at the weekend. They changed the manager, changed the players, and got a style of playing that made it very difficult for Notts to break them down. So we'll wait and see. I don't think Stockport will be the kind of team to sit back and defend, because they're right up there. They need results just as much as Notts do, really, because they're in the thick of a promotion race. So be really interesting to see how they take to the game. And it's got all the hallmarks of another good game, and you hope that Notts will come out on top for the third time running.
Did Neil review or reflect much in his press conference today on Saturday and Chesterfield? I mean, from my amateur perspective, I think Chesterfield fundamentally did a number on us, and played around a very specific way of playing against us, which they executed very well. What was Neil's philosophy, approach to rationale today?
I think Neil was certainly in the first half felt that they just weren't at it. Second half a lot better, but still couldn't sort of really find a way to hurt Chesterfield and create the number of chances. I think what I would say is, I was aware Chesterfield played 5 at the back, didn't they, at the weekend? And if you recall, Boreham Wood did exactly the same, came here and played 5 at the back. And it does seem to be a system that Notts do struggle with. I think Hartlepool as well played 5 at the back, didn't they? So for whatever reason, that 5 at the back does seem to cause Notts a few problems. And they've got to find a way around that, and quickly, because, teams are smart, teams are shrewd, and if they know and sense that Notts find it difficult to break down 5-man defences, then we'll see more of that. So that's a real challenge going forwards. I just hope that the team, after watching the Kings Lynn game last Tuesday and obviously what happened at the weekend, it's a bit of a wake-up call, really. They got out of jail a little bit because Torquay lost at the weekend. So, but these are the games that you need to get results from. So, but listen, Notts' record against the teams sort of in and around them is actually pretty good. So, I have no fears that they sort of rise to the occasion in these games. But, the teams below them, for whatever reason, they just sometimes seem to struggle with.
The table now is condensing quite a bit. From Torquay effectively being out of sight, they're coming back now. They're coming back, aren't they? And clearly Sutton are in a particularly good position with games in hand to overhaul them.
Yeah.
Irrespective of the loss, which was very frustrating on Saturday, if you look at the overall gap that Notts potentially find themselves in to Torquay now compared to a month ago, then substantial erosion has been made into that gap. And from playing just almost for a playoff place, both these promotion places are bang up for grabs now, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. It was just a shame that they couldn't get a result on Saturday. If they got that, they would have had in a great position to catch Torquay and overhaul them. Listen, that's still possible. Sutton have gone great guns this season, but again, for them, small squad, can they make it last? I mean, that's the problem that Torquay have had. They've got a couple of injuries. Yeah. They lost Danny Wright up front. He's had to have a hamstring operation. Been a key player for him. I don't think he's back for another month or so. And as we've seen, it's obviously had an impact on them. They've stopped being that free scoring Torquay side that motored up to the top of the table and set such a pace. So everything is still to play for. There's going to be a lot of twists and turns. I think what Notts have got to do is just keep doing what they've done prior to Saturday, which is try and string as many wins together as they can in a short space of time, and see that gap and hope that gap comes down, because it will do. I think, as we've seen, all it needs is one player another club to get a serious injury or is out for any length of time. Drop of form can even happen, as we've seen with Torquay. And it's there for the taking. Notts have just got to be able to be in a position to capitalise. But what I would say is I still don't think Notts have got the artillery at the top end of the pitch to really ignite at the moment. I still think if Carl Wootton isn't scoring, then there are issues.
But after weeks of kind of almost being put off from Kel Roberts' updates, it does appear now to be a fairly substantial beam of light at the end of the tunnel for Kel coming back, correct?
Yeah, well, he was taking the mick out of my hair today, so that would suggest he's back on the verge. He was full of banter. So yeah, and listen, that's such a big miss. I mean, people perhaps don't appreciate just how big of a miss he is. When you look at his contribution last season in such a short space of time when he came into the club, the goals he scores, the goals he creates, the ball carrying ability. He's the best ball carrier in the team. He gets you up the pitch. Got a lovely left peg, and I think more than anything, he's actually probably the most consistent winger at the club as well. I think we saw Ruben Rodriguez against Dagenham, and we all thought that was it. The touch paper was lit, and we were going to go and see Ruben go on this great run of form. I watched him against Kings Lynn. Didn't happen for him. And obviously didn't happen for him at the weekend. I think that's what separates the likes of Callum Roberts and the others, is that when Callum plays, he's usually very consistent. He's a 7 out of 10 every week. So great news for him to be back. I would just have a slight bit of caution in the fact that he's only just come back from injury. Do we expect too much of him straight away? Because we all know what a fantastic player he is. I think it will take time to get his legs back. But I'm hoping, fingers crossed, that if he comes through this week, I hope he would start rather than be on the bench, because I think if you can give him 60 minutes even, that'll just accelerate his return to the squad for the league a little bit quicker, rather than coming on for the last 20 minutes or so. If he's in a position to do that, I mean, that's a judgment call that Neil's got to make. But if it was me, I'd like to see if he can get him 60 minutes if you can.
So are we saying there is a real possibility that Kel could be back playing competitive football as early as this coming weekend?
Yeah, I mean, Neil didn't rule it out last Thursday in the press conference, did he? So I think if everything goes okay this week and there's no comeback in terms of inflammation and the joints, he's not too tired, then yeah, I think we will see him. And I think just for the team, be such a massive lift, particularly in home games, particularly in the tight games where Notts do struggle to open teams up, because Callum has got that ability. I think the difference between him and Enzio is Enzio's very direct, whereas Callum's a little bit more clever, got a little bit more guile. Both great players, but both different in terms of how they play the game. And certainly when you get Callum Roberts anywhere near 20 yards outside of the box, that sort of range, as we've seen when he cuts inside on that left foot, he's very good at finding the back of the net. So I think, yeah, massive boost for the team and the manager.
And it does also appear, because a lot's happened since we were last together, that the game will be taking place on Saturday. Some Notts fans have been speculating with the abandonment or the postponement as it stands at the minute, null and voiding of National League North and South, as to whether Oxford City would be playing. They are actually quite a professional outfit, because we had them down in the FA Cup.
David Oldfield's a manager, isn't he?
Yeah, they were a well-run club. They were a well-run club, and apparently they've been tweeting earlier today. So I would not anticipate any issues with that game taking place. They also have an artificial pitch, so were there to be any flooding issues or whatever, that won't be a problem there. So you'd like to think that game will absolutely be taking place. Just to square away Chesterfield from Notts County Stats, Richard, he's very good, the stats he does.
Richard, he's done a couple of bits for me before. He's very good,
very good. And he says that just looking at the XG, which is expected goals in brackets, stats for the Chesterfield game, Notts recorded their lowest XG rating of the season. I'm sure that means a lot to a lot of people. It means naffle, to be honest with you.
Well, I struggle with the whole XG theory.
I know you like them, right? But then again, so does Paul Taylor. And what's he know about football? So, you know.
I'm not. People bang on about XG, and I've got to be honest, I'm a very, very old-fashioned man in the respect that I don't really get it, to be honest. But the stats people, I think they do give a good indication. So it'd be interesting if Richard could go back and see what the XG was for the games where teams played for 5 at the back. I'd be interested to know that, because I remember Boreham Wood was a particularly difficult game where Notts only in the first 10 minutes of the game created the 2 best chances, and after that they struggled. And Hartlepool as well. I think they certainly played 5 at the back. I remember that as well. So it would be interesting to see what the stats are for the teams that have played 5 at the back, and whether that denotes whether Notts do really struggle against these teams who like to play low blocks and play 5 at the back. But I think with players like Callum coming back, they just give you that little bit of bedevilment, don't they, up front, and maybe can make things happen.
Yeah, Callum offers you a little bit of something that other people don't really bring to the table. He's
unique. Different. He's unique.
He does something in the final third of the pitch, as we've, the challenge clearly has been scoring goals. He, you would say, out of nothing conjures things up. Kyle Wootton does very well, but Roberts is the one that just does that little bit of something when you're thinking, oh, how are we going to find a way through?
Yeah, like Barrow away last season, Barnett in the playoff semi-final. It just those sort of moments where he just drops the shoulder and tight spaces. I mean, people call him the Geordie Messi, but he is like that. He's just got that ability. Such a low centre of gravity, and he makes defenders panic. When you see him pick up the ball, just outside the box, he's so good, and the way he shifts the ball, the way he manoeuvres it, he makes defenders look clumsy. And invariably after that, you get clumsy challenges, and you either win a penalty or he skips around you and he's put it in the top corner. So, great to see him back, and I'm sure he'll be absolutely raring to go, because we all wanted him to kick on after last season, and I'm sure he would have been frustrated at not being able to do that. So really looking forward to seeing him back, and let's hope he can bring some more goals to the table. I still think, and I got involved in a debate about this on Twitter the weekend, I still don't think the quartet of strikers is as good as last year. And I think that if you look at the goals for column, last year Notts were third, or actually joint second top scorers in the league with 61 goals. This year, nowhere near it. So I think the stats obviously do tell their own story.
Okay, let's debate now, out of the roadmap, fans coming back to fixtures. And let's just perhaps explain that as best we understand it to Notts fans. So as it stands, for professional level football, including the National League, fans will be allowed back into grounds from May the 17th onwards, and the size of that crowd will be capped at either 10,000 or 25% of capacity.
Yeah,
which in the case of Notts, although Notts have 21,000 seats, I think the operational capacity is nearer 16. So if, as it stands, we are looking at 4,000 people coming into Meadow Lane. And as it stands with the fixtures, we would have our final home game of the season after the 17th. Correct? Have you managed to speak to anyone at Notts yet about the implications? But is that effectively what we know in a nutshell right now?
That's it. Yeah, that's in effect in a nutshell what we know right now. As much as I'm happy and excited by the news, a lot of the things that make me worry is that we were in this position before, weren't we, when we were hoping to get 2,000 fans back in, and then what happened? We had a blow up, and the pandemic kicked off again, and then we're all put back into this third lockdown. So as much as I'm happy, I'm a little bit cautious, because when everything reopens back up, how's that going to impact the pandemic? I know vaccines are taking place. But listen, on the surface, it's fantastic news. I can't wait to see fans back inside the ground again. I'm sick to death doing these games with no atmosphere. You know, a lot of the times you turn up and you if it wasn't branded, you just think it was a friendly or a reserve game.
Yeah.
And I think the players would love to have the fans back, because certainly at home, I think Meadow Lane, when it's full or when it's got a decent sized crowd, is an imposing place to play. And I've got no doubt in my mind that that's why the home record isn't quite as up to speed as it was, quite as impressive as it was last season. I think if you remember last year, I think Notts only lost twice at home, didn't they? So in the league. So it's one of them, mate. I think. Listen, just take it each day as it comes. But it'd be lovely to think that we can get to May to 22nd and the final home game of the season, and it's the game where Notts can go up as champions, and we've got 4,000 Notts fans roaring, and we're all having a big party at the end of it, socially distanced, of course.
Of course, we're running before we can walk. But you know, with my PR and marketing hat, I can think of a few better ways than to launch a season ticket campaign a week or two before that. You know, because that takes care of your 4,000. I mean, Notts' season ticket holder base is round about the 3,000. Great way of running a campaign for your following year's season tickets, as getting them renewed before that game, and then you know, in you get to that game. Well, look, we're running before we can walk. Do you think does this decision, do you think, change, alter anybody's any club's current position? So I'm thinking Dover and potentially Kings Lynn, and I'm thinking National League North and National League South. Is this too late to have any effect or bearing, do you think, on what's happened over the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, I think today's news has probably come too late. To be honest, I think clubs would have made their minds up. They've already put players on furlough, haven't they? And I can't see them reversing that decision now. I mean, they'd have to wait until May. So we're still it's actually the 22nd of Feb today. So you know, you're talking another 3 months, aren't you, before fans are allowed back? Is that right?
You're talking 3 months, and you could potentially get 2 home games of revenue, depending.
I mean, it doesn't really make a difference, does it? Really, I think if it had been a bit earlier, maybe if fans were allowed back earlier, maybe that might have made a difference. But I think, you know, the process has already started now, hasn't it? I think we're just waiting for official ratification that the season's going to be made null and void in North and South. National League's going to obviously go on and continue. I think the interesting thing that the thing that I'm most concerned with is with these teams. Is with these teams who are refusing to play. What does the league do with them, and how? You know, what do they do with the points that have already been put on the board? I know the National League have imposed sanctions on Dover for not fulfilling a fixture. So what happens there? You know, Dover have said they're not going to fulfil their fixtures. The squad's on furlough. Doesn't look like they're going to put volunteers in to play for free. So what happens with their league record? Do you expunge it? Do you make it 0? Take all the points off that take off the points that teams have won against them? Because if that happens, then that obviously has a great bearing on at the top of the table, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my view has been pretty consistent all the way through this. I think the only thing you really can do is expunge their record. I think you have to take all the points off so they go to 0, and there has to be a sanction applied to the following season. The only chance you have got of Dover and Kings Lynn, and anyone else who may be thinking of following them, only chance you've got is a sanction that will hurt them next year. Fines is clearly ridiculous because, you know, everyone accepts everyone is struggling financially. So fines, so what? The other one that I saw Stephen Cleeve float a little bit is that currently, with Macclesfield not taking up that position this year, this division is on 23 teams. And he was kind of speculating about a plan whereby some form of playoff in National League North and South among the clubs that wanted to carry on, with one place available for promotion. Now, whatever mechanic you used, but you know, you'd somehow get to a point where the playoff winners of National League North would play the playoff winners of National League South.
And then have one big final out of North and South to see who takes the final place.
One place is available. That would then take the complement up to 24 teams, because as it stands, it's 23.
Yeah, but then you leave yourself. Then you're going to leave one team short in the North and South, then, aren't you? And
Look.
Yeah, it's a strange one, mate. I mean, there's so many.
What he's trying to do.
Yeah.
He's not weaken Kings Lynn's position. Yeah. Because clearly he doesn't want anyone relegated.
Yeah.
And try and some form of olive branch. Because clearly Dorking look like they're going to blow quite a bit of cash, or are going to take it a fair way. I think they have quite wealthy backers. I think they're going to go quite hard because they've already said they've instructed lawyers against the league.
Yeah.
Now, whether that becomes an olive branch to be thrown a little bit further down the line, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. Yeah. I wouldn't like to be the league deciding that, though. I can't say, please, I'm not making that decision.
Yeah. I still maintain, if you could somehow pass a rule that says any club not fulfilling its fixtures in this division this season is given a 10-point sanction that will be...
I think they've got... Yeah.
At the start of next season. I promise you, Leigh. I promise you. Dover, Kings Lynn would then finish the season. They might put youth team players. I tell you, they would finish the season.
Yeah, no, I think you've got to be some sanction.
They would.
Yeah, I think you've got to apply some sanction. You can't just sit and say you're not going to play the games. I know the financial position would be difficult, but again, like Tunbridge Wells we're going to do, why don't you just get the youth team, stick the youth team in, let them have a go. I know it impacts the integrity of the league, but
it impacts the integrity of the league considerably less.
Yes.
The integrity of I'm taking my ball home. I don't want to abide by the majority vote. I'm just not going to bother playing the games anymore.
Yes.
That's where we are at the minute.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, definitely.
Did you see? My son pointed out today that Stockport have taken two of Chorley's better players, with Chorley having been furloughed.
No, but it doesn't surprise me. I think there was talk of a lad at Telford as well, James Hardy, a central midfield player. Apparently he was put on furlough and is now moving to a National League club. I don't know which one it is, but it doesn't surprise me. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me in the slightest. I think, and you've got to remember as well, these players in the North and South, they ain't going to be on a great deal of money, and it's something that, you know, I wonder whether not to look at. They had great success with Callum Roberts from Blythe Spartans. Can they look, and I don't really want to use the word, but exploit the situation? You know, there are good players in the North and South. Certainly at clubs like York City, Boston United. So, and if it wouldn't have to be a permanent contract for now and for 2 years. No. Well, you've got to give them a short-term deal until the end of the season. Give them a bit more money than what they're on now. I mean, a lot of them would be part-time as well, so I'm sure they'd snap your hands off.
Well, they'd be playing football for a start, because as it stands, if you are at North and South, you aren't playing another game of football until July, August.
Yeah,
as it stands.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%.
On that subject, do you think there is still room then, or scope, or the capability from the owners to bring more players into Notts' squad? Or do you think this loan signing is the last of the last? Because obviously there is no, you know, we're not bound by the normal Football League regulations anymore.
It's a difficult one because there's no endless pot of cash. But
no,
I think the longer the goal scoring situation continues, and as you've seen by the numbers of the goals that the centre forwards have scored, I just wonder whether, if we get sort of a month down the line, whether not to address it and whether they just try and bring somebody else. Because Effiong hasn't really worked out so far. Knowles has looked good in patches. Elijah Sam, I mean, he's still very inconsistent. And it just strikes me as a little bit odd that Notts the vital end of a pitch. I mean, if you look at any team that's gunning for promotion or wants to do well, if you go through the top teams, they've always got that player, haven't they? They've got that 20 goal a season man. Whether it be Harry Kane at Spurs or Salah at Liverpool, or that they've always got that one player who's a little bit special at the top end of the pitch. And I think, as for Kyle, it's a lot of pressure on his shoulders, and I think he's always going to play. But I think there's an extraordinary burden on his shoulders this season, because he just hasn't got, in my opinion, the level of quality of the strikers alongside him in a partnership. By all accounts, Chesterfield's front two at the weekend were very good.
Asante looks a good player. He's followed James from Gloucester to Chesterfield. He looks a decent player. And I think that's the real issue. That's the real issue for me. Obviously, Christian Dennis has been a huge miss. I mean, we've been about this before. Where's Thomas, etc. But I think that's one area that if there was going to be any transfer activity further down the line, and I wonder whether Neil might be thinking, I'll give it a couple of weeks. I'll give it 2 or 3 weeks. And who knows? Conference North, Conference South could pick up a gem. Could pick up a gem of a centre forward who comes in and busts his gut because it's a big opportunity for him. Comes in like Asante at Chesterfield, for instance. Can they do something there? I don't know. I just think that is my concern. As good as the defence has been, and they obviously don't concede many, it's the goals at the top end of the pitch. I know they were brilliant against Dagenham, but it's a lot of the games. Against Kings Lynn, it took a worldie, didn't it, to win that game. And there wasn't really a lot of clear-cut opportunities created in that game either. And I just think that Kyle perhaps needs somebody just to give opposition defences something else to worry about, because if you take care of Carl Wootton, then I think, a lot of teams will say, well, if we can take care of him, he's their top scorer, then we'll have a chance in the game. Yeah, and clearly a lot of this equation is going to be governed by the impending return of Kel Roberts, isn't it? Because, Kel will occupy certainly one, and probably 2 people will be allocated to keep an eye on him. Most clubs will put 2 men on him. And so that frees up other people and all the rest of it. And if you can get him back in and playing regular, then I think that to an extent takes care of itself. But if Kel isn't able to get back into the swing of things, or Kyle takes an injury, we are potentially then we're going to be weak. We're going to be weak in terms of scoring the goals to win games, given it's 26 or 27 goals so far this season from 20 games. So,
yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think that's always been it's funny because I listened to one of the podcasts I did with The Office back before the start of the season. I said at the time, even then, before a ball in kit, I said that my biggest concern this season with losing Dennis was the goals. Would they score enough goals to have a real difference at the top end of the table? And I think that's probably the only thing you would say about the team that's stopping it from truly catching fire. I mean, you look at the goals that they scored last season, whipping Eastleigh 4-0, going to Barrow, winning 2-0. Notts were scoring goals last season, is proven by the centre, and the bulk of them came from the centre forwards. Wes Thomas, Christian Dennis, Carl Wootton. Only one of those players remains, and as good as Carl has been, I think he isn't. For a young player, he's under an extraordinary amount of pressure to carry the can in terms of scoring the goals required to fire Notts to promotion this season.
I believe you're on Notts duty tomorrow against Stockport, yeah?
No.
You're not? Oh, sorry.
No, Rotherham Forest.
It's that one, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, Rotherham Forest, then Derby Forest on Friday, and then Notts on Saturday. Okay. Well, I'll be glad to have you back. Yes, I'm looking forward to the trophy game. Because again, if Notts can get to Wembley, then you'd hope with everything that's going on and the roadmap, fans will be allowed to go, and I think that'd be fantastic for the club and its supporters.
Leigh, as always, thank you very much indeed. I know you are busy filing stories all over the Midlands today, so thank you for taking time out of your shift through till about midnight tonight. So thank you very much indeed.
Problem.
So slightly shorter than usual, but lots for us to have talked about. Thank you to everyone, to Lee Brearley, Keith Cook, Notts County Stats, Kevin J.S. Duska Jr., Stephen Orton. So thank you very much. And Trevor West got me some notes as well earlier, my old Greenwood school pal. So thank you, Leigh.
No problem.
The barbers are in the post. Okay, they might get here just before the 12th. Okay.